What we're talking about today is the AWS CWI exam. If you don't know what the AWS is, you're in the wrong business. That's the American Welding Society. They basically dictate everything that the welding industry does. The Certified Welding Inspector exam is a very difficult exam. I'm just going to kind of give you some pointers on how to pass it, some should-dos and some should-nots that you should be doing or should not be doing. The first thing you have to do is decide what code book you're going to work with. There's two that you can take it with, AWS D1.1 and the API 1104. This is the D1.1 right here, the structural steel welding code. That's what I took it with. People will tell you to take it with the API 1104 because it's a lot thinner of a document. This is very thick, as you can see. The reason that I feel, it's just my personal opinion, that you should take it with the D1.1 is because of a number of reasons actually. First and foremost, if you take this book and you cut it in half right off the bat, this second half is all annexes that you don't use. You only use this first section here. Another big reason, and this is probably the most important reason, if you open up the back, you'll see it has an index. The 1104 does not have an index. That is a big deal. If you get a question during the code section of this and you have no idea where it is, you can always go to the index. That's the reason that we use the D1.1. You can use whatever you want, but I would suggest using the AWS D1.1. I passed this test when I was 23 years old in 2005, and I did it with this. And people came up to me and they said I was crazy because I had the D1.1. And I asked one gentleman, and I said, "How many times have you taken this?" And he said, "Well, this will be my 6th time." I passed it on my 1st time. He was using the 1104. He was on his 6th time. I don't know if he passed it, obviously, because I have no idea who the guy was. But I would suggest the D1.1. Again, it's up to you. You can do whatever you want. But let's get into what the test is all about. Part A is going to be fundamentals. Part B is going to be practical. And Part C is going to be the code section. All right, a little bit about the test here. You're going to have 2 hours for each section, so you're going to have a total of 6 hours. It's a long test. People screw up on the time. They sit there and say, "I have 150 questions for the fundamentals part," and they go, "I have so much time for each question." That is a huge mistake. You don't want to look at it as, "Hey, I only got a minute and whatever for this question." You know, what you do is you go through each section, you do the ones that you can go right through quickly, and then you come back and put more time into the other ones. What people do that's a huge error is they'll sit on one question for a huge amount of time and then they run out of time. Each one of these, it's very hard to finish within the 2 hours. So your time management is essential. You want to make sure that you go through and you do the ones that you know right off the bat, and then you come back. And I did with the code section, I went back 4 times. I went through, if I didn't know right off the bat, I let it go. Came back, did it 4 times before I was finally done with it. With your book, on your cover, you're going to want to write on the inside, you're going to put notes on the inside of where you think stuff is for the code section part of it. That you're allowed to write on the inside of the cover, you're allowed to tab it, you're allowed to highlight. So what you want to do is either write the notes on the inside of the cover or put tabs on it where you know stuff is going to come up. And then when you get to the page, you want to highlight the information that you think is going to be asked. That being said, they might not ask it, but it's a way of saving time. You can see the inside of this cover, I've got notes on it and the page numbers, and it's just stuff that I thought for sure was going to be on there. A lot of it wasn't, some of it was. Essential variables, qualifying WPSs, visual inspection. You know there's going to be a question on visual inspection. Preheats, post-heats, electrode groups, radiographs, things like that. You want to have some way of being able to zip through some of these questions. Otherwise, you're going to be out of time and you're going to fail. So, one of the things I want to do with this video is if you take the D1.1 exam, you know, get on there and throw some comments on there of what you experienced, whether it was negative, positive, and you know, put it out there so that people can learn from it and, you know, pass it without taking it 6 times. You know, you may think the AWS wants you to pass this test, but they really don't, because they're going to get paid for it if you come back and take it again. And I got a couple of reasons why, when I took it, that I just couldn't believe some of the stuff that was on there. It was just ridiculous. I mean, it wasn't something that you would do as a CWI, and that's why it kind of bothered me. But I'm going to give you what happened with me so that you won't screw it up, because I feel like I might have screwed some of that stuff up. We're going to start with the fundamentals here. They're going to put a lot of stuff on welding in general. You got to know your TIG, your stick, your MIG. You also need to know your sub-arc, all your welding processes, any of them could be on there. A lot of welding symbol stuff, so make sure you know your welding symbols. They were on there, and that's all fine. Inspection methods, you got to know a lot about inspection on there. I don't know what percentage, but it was a decent amount. They asked a lot about x-rays, and this is where I'm saying that they might not want you to pass, because the x-rays or radiographs, if you're going to do those, you're going to have somebody in-house that does that, or you're going to send it out. You have to be a certified radiograph interpreter in order to do that. So why would they ask a bunch of questions on x-rays? Because they know you don't know the answers. Get in the x-ray part, the radiograph, make sure you understand as much of it as you possibly can, because they asked a huge amount on x-rays. Practical. This is where they're going to give you a bunch of plastic specimens of welds, replicas, if you will. They're also going to give you a separate little book, and the book isn't necessarily the correct code that you know. So if you think that you have to have an 1/8 of an inch face reinforcement on the weld, which typically is what's going on, that might not be what's in the book. So you have to refer to the book for every single thing that you measure, every dimension that you take, every weld discontinuity. You look up in the book and make sure it's in there. It's not a real big section. I think it was 27 pages. But they're going to give you these plastic specimens. They're not all that accurate. You can see where people have dug calipers into them. So it's really hard to, one question was down to a 1/64 of an inch that I had. And I put the fill gauge in there, and the plastic specimen wasn't square. It was a little bit sketchy. So you really want to take your time on this. The practical, I will say, there was, I want to say 7 or 8 people there taking just this section. So a lot of people failed on this. I didn't think it was that hard. I thought the code was worse, but that's me, and everybody's different. But there was a lot of people that didn't pass the practical section on this. They used to, if you failed it, you just failed it. You had to take the whole test over again. Now, if you pass 2 out of the 3, and your overall average is above a 72, they'll let you take just the one that you failed. So you have to have at least a 72 average for everything, and then pass 2 of these, then you can just take the 1. That's a new thing they're doing, which is good. It helps you not have to come back for 6 hours and all the travel and all that stuff. But you're going to want to know how to use a fillet gauge. You're going to want to know how to use a face reinforcement gauge, calipers, micrometers, things like that. That's all in there. There's also some general inspection questions in here. They're going to give you a little photo card, and they're going to have dye penetrant tests on there. They're going to have mag particle tests on there, and they're just going to ask you general questions like, what is this testing process? And you'll see a developer with, the penetrant coming through, and you'll say penetrant test. Or they'll ask the discontinuities that are in the actual pictures. So you got to know that stuff. There was also an ultrasound. They wanted to know what kind of probe it was, and it was an angle probe. So you got to know a little bit about ultrasound. The part that I thought was the hardest when I took it was the code section. They asked a lot of sketchy stuff in this that had, I've done inspections for a number of different types of industries. They didn't ask a lot on WPSs or PQRs or welder quals. A lot of the stuff that I wrote on the inside of the book, it didn't ask. It had a lot on reinforcements. How much reinforcement do you want to put on some type of groove joint based on the material and all that stuff. So there was a lot on reinforcements. Again, they hammered x-rays. They do this because they know you don't know what it is, and they want you to take it again and give them more money. So you got to really know your x-ray section, your radiographs. And then for some reason they asked a number of questions on a thing called shelf bars. I've never heard of a shelf bar. I have no idea what it is when I'm taking this test, right? The one question was, if you were going to use a shelf bar, what position would you be in? And I just put down the horizontal because I thought the only time I ever refer to a shelf is when I'm doing horizontal. You shelf each bead up. There's another one where it asked, there was at least, I want to say 3 questions on shelf bars. And I never heard of it, and I wasted a good, I want to say 15, 20 minutes because it was driving me crazy. I couldn't find it in the code book. And, I never heard of it. I got out and I was asking guys in the parking lot, I'm like, what's a shelf bar? I don't know. It's sketchy. It's something that they added, a little tiny bit that they added to the 2010 edition. And they know you don't know what it is, so they put questions on it. No shelf bars. I'm going to do another video just on shelf bars. When I got home, I got on the internet, I Google searched shelf bars, welding. I couldn't even find anything on the Google search. So that just shows you how limited it is in actual industry. What I found out it's a horizontal groove weld. They'll put a little bar underneath it so that the weld doesn't fall down. Of course, I got on there and the welder blogs, they're all saying, oh, they're sissy bars and this and that. And I mean, if you know how to do a horizontal groove joint, you don't need a shelf bar, right? But they're asking questions on it. Make sure you know what a shelf bar is. So, I mean, this is just what they do. I mean, they also have questions on there that says all of the above, A and B, or C and D, and you got to decipher all those, because you'll be like, okay, I know A is right, but is B right? You question it. So you just got to go with your initial thought. You know, that's usually your best bet. All right, if you have any questions on the CWI exam, feel free to throw them in the comment section. I'll try and answer them, and maybe somebody else will know if I don't know. It's a very difficult test. Make sure you study. Oh, the other thing is there's a seminar that you can take a week before you take the test. I would highly recommend taking that seminar, because I feel like if there was a new thing about something like shelf bars, they would probably say something about it in the seminar. And the first time I took the seminar, and it definitely helped me, and I don't think I would have passed if I didn't take the seminar. All right, like I said, I'm going to add a video just on shelf bars so I can show you what it actually is, and it's very limited, but you know, it's out there. And I actually researched it as soon as I got home and made sure I knew what was going on with it. So we'll take a look at shelf bars, and there's actually a print that I found on there. And I also found some blogs where welders were spewing about shelf bars. And I also found a D1.1 revision that was added about the shelf bars. So if you want to see a video on shelf bars, just keep posted. It'll be up here soon. If you have any questions, like I said, put them in the comments. Good luck on your test if you're taking the test. All right, thanks for watching and subscribing to TV Welding.